Okay.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. This is an information session for the 2025-2026 Civic Poet program. My name is Zach Frimmel. I'm a grants project manager at the Office of Arts and Culture. I started a few months ago here, and I'm joined by my colleague, Irene Gomez, who is joining us online. Irene is the outgoing project manager for this program and the incoming project manager for this program. Irene, would you like to share anything?
I just wanted to say that I also manage the City Artist Program, which is an individual artist funding program. And I also work with the Seattle City of Literature. So just those are my two other programs. And we, as Zach mentioned, we're sort of in transition from me to him on the transition between the two of us in managing Civic Poet. So we're working together during this time.
Yeah, I'm grateful to Irene for stewarding the program last cycle and being able to work with her this one to have some institutional knowledge and yeah, be a co-manager for us. The other programs I manage are the Arts and Parks program, which is arts and cultural events throughout the city of Seattle parks. That'll be opening later this year, September. And then the Artists at the Center program, which are pop-up performances at the Seattle Center. Those are like generally 60 to 90 minute one-time pop-up performances. I can share more about that later. But we're here to talk about Civic Poet. So with that shared, I'm going to move into this next slide here, the roadmap. So basically, we're going to go over the program overview, some high-level things, then get into the eligibility criteria, move into the application components and the support materials. We have the selection process and criteria. We're going to do a little demo of the application and submittable. We'll walk you through that. And then the timeline, some key dates, and then Q&A. We'll have time for it at the end, but also feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation as well. And we'll kind of play with my ear, depending on how deep of a discussion we need to go into each one of those. And so I'm going to kick it over to Irene to give us the program overview.
Okay, and I don't know the names of I don't know the name of the second person who arrived.
Me?
Yeah.
Janine Walker.
Janine Walker. Okay, great. Nice to meet you. All right, so I'm gonna cover the overview for the grant program. Civic Poet is it's a citywide cultural ambassador for poetry and the broader literary field or sector. It is a 2-year commission at a total of $25,000 that is split in half for each year and is intended to cover expenses, fees, or costs related to programming. For this commission, the Civic Poet generates an annual work plan, implements a range of opportunities around the city, and delivers a year-end sort of closing debrief or evaluation. This cycle, the 2025-26 cycle, will determine the 5th Civic Poet for the city of Seattle, and we're very excited that you're interested in applying. As far as the eligibility for Civic Poet, it is for focused on Seattle-based poets who have an established body of work, which can include published or self-published work, readings or spoken word presentations of different kinds, project planning experience, and an application of racial equity practice, which, because you're working, the Civic Poet works throughout the city in different communities, different ages, different cultures. It's very important to have that racial equity practice. So the eligibility, you are eligible if, I'm going to just run through these bullet items. Again, based in Seattle, this means your residence is in the city of Seattle. That you are eligible to work in the United States, whatever documentation that requires. That you are 18 years of age at the time of the deadline, of the application deadline. And that you are not enrolled as a student at any level at the time, again, at the time of the application deadline. Also that you have demonstrated interest and or experience in promoting equity and inclusion through the arts. And finally, that you show strong program planning and implementation with partnerships. And that's partnerships from different sectors, from different disciplines, all ages, that profit, nonprofit, all of the above. Any questions about any of these? Okay. I'm going to hand it back to Zach.
I have a question, Irene. Are you open to, so I received this invite through a poetry group I'm part of in Seattle. Are you open to candidates who are traveling poets that don't have a permanent address in Seattle, but that frequently pass through the city?
It does actually require someone who is based in Seattle, who's stationed in Seattle permanently. And part of that is just the familiarity with the city and the dynamics in the city is a pretty important consideration for the Civic Poet. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
I would add to that. There's a lot of like event producing and curating of events in Seattle that it certainly would need someone who's here, like kind of more year round, to be able to organize those events and be present at those events and be a featured artist for certain events also. So. Yeah, I think that also plays into the.
Yeah, good to know. It sounded like on-site presence at events year-round was kind of a direction. So thanks for clarifying up front.
Of course, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your question.
Okay. So I'm going to move into the application components, and we'll go through some of these also. Well, we'll go through them in the submittable. So you can kind of see them as well with some of these details. So the first part of the application, we have 3 narrative questions. The first one being a statement of interest and commitment to this 2-year commission as a Civic Poet that includes your relationship to Seattle. And for this question, this is the first time we're offering an option to submit in either audio or video for this particular program, just based on applicant feedback over the years for accessibility. And so you will have either the option to submit a 2-minute video or a 2-minute audio file, or you can do 300 words in writing as well. For audio and video, we're not expecting it to be highly produced or edited. Just mostly so applicants don't feel like they have to spend a lot of time. Specifically, it's more about just the content of what you're sharing. And so number 2, for the narrative question, we have a summary of how your new work, projects, and events will reflect new and different voices and perspectives through poetry. You know, this is kind of showing us a little bit about the vision that you have as the poet, and like how is your work going to be reflecting perspectives, and how is your poetry going to be kind of this vehicle for this role as the civic poet. And narrative question 3 is a description of your capacity to plan, implement, and partner on projects and events. Again, a big responsibility of the civic poet is to do all of these components, manage projects, work with planning events of other poets, and activating and engaging the community. So we want to understand a little bit about your history with how you've kind of organized those things and kind of what your capacity is in the past, and then also presently, how you're addressing those efforts. So those are some of their questions. Any questions around this?
Yes, for number 2, so a summary of how your new work, is this how we would, the work we would intend to do during those 2 years, or is it just work I've been doing lately and how that reflects so I can imagine I would wonder when doing the application what work to talk about.
Yeah, great question. I think it can be both the new work that, like the emerging work that you're doing, your more recent work, and work that you, again, kind of envision doing in that role, and how that intersects with the perspectives and voices that you'll be using to connect, like through poetry throughout the community, and how those will, benefit the community, and also just bring them in and engage them. So how are those like themes or the content, or like what are that you're working with, and how will that kind of be like used through poetry to connect with the poetry community, but also the community at large in Seattle? Any other questions? Any questions online?
No questions only.
Okay. Okay, I think somebody is up. Okay, the second part of the application process are the support materials. So this is going to include your resume, 3 pages max, 1 letter of recommendation, 1 page max in length, and the letter of recommendation would endorse your literary accomplishments, your ability to plan and implement a project, and your racial equity practice. And a letter from a past civic poet is not eligible for this support material. We're also asking for 2 literary work samples, 2 poems, specifically no longer than 5 pages each, that reflect your best work for this program. Include brief work sample descriptions, and then the order of reviewing, which we'll talk about in the application. And then the last support material, we have material showing proof of establishment within the field. You'll select one of these, either a publication covers or promotional pieces for 1 or more events. You can submit 2 images at maximum. an article or media coverage up to 300 words, an audio video of significant performance or reading, up to 2 minutes for that. And those are the 4 support materials that we have here. Any questions about that?
I had one item to add if there are no questions.
Yeah, could you share that while I go with someone downstairs real quick?
Oh,
I'll be back in a second.
did you want me to go ahead?
Go right ahead.
He said go ahead, yeah.
Okay, great. What I wanted to share with you is just the names of the past and current civic poets, just so you know, since it does say that a letter of recommendation from a past civic poet is not eligible. So I'm just giving you this list. Claudia Castro Luna, Anastasia Renee, Jordan Keith, and the current civic poet Shinyi Pai. So those are both the past and the current civic poets. So you know, if these are peer poets that you know that you might consider asking for a letter, these would not be eligible from these 4 individuals. Any other questions you might have about these support materials? Okay, great.
Okay, thank you, Irene.
Mhm.
Are we good to move on next?
Yep.
Okay, so this is just kind of more side notes for the components we just talked about. So if you're submitting an application component, whether it's a video file or PDF, and it exceeds the maximum limit for that component, we'll just instruct panelists to start at the beginning of the submitted file and review and evaluate up to the maximum limit. So for example, if you submit a resume with more than 3 pages, the panelists will only review the first 3 pages of the resume. This is one, to respect the time of our panelists, as well as just have a fair process for how much is being evaluated per applicant. Any questions about that? Okay, kick it back to Irene.
All right, so in terms of the selection process, a peer review panel, so in other words, peer poets, writers, administrators who work in the literary arts or a literary organization, maybe even an educator who works in the literary arts. All of the above would fall into this potential peer review panel member. This group will review and assess all the applications based on a set criteria for all the applications. And the criteria that is used for all the applications to assess all the applications, I'm going to read through these the following bullets. And they're each worth 20 points each for a total of 80 points. Advanced skill as a generative and committed poet, including strong ties to Seattle. Demonstrate ability to engage audiences across sectors, age, and cultures. We made reference earlier to citywide ambassador, and so the idea is that different parts of the city comprised of different ages, different cultures, just different potential partners. So the ability to engage all of those members of our communities here in Seattle. Capacity to apply racial equity practice and skills to work. And finally, the ability to plan and execute projects. And these are projects, be they small, medium, or large. Applicants with top scores will advance to the final interview level and be contacted. The final interviews will be on Wednesday, October 23rd. So there is a second tier, and that's the interview level. And are there any questions about either the process or the criteria?
How do you envision the best way for us to show, let's say, like the fourth one?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
I'm asking what would be a great way to show, let's say I want to get 20 points for all of them, and one is the ability to plan and execute projects. And I know the projects I've done would be highlighted in my resume, and then in the first part, we have 300 words to talk about. So but I wonder if there are other ways they're going to show the many things we've done and are capable of doing. I just wonder how is my question clear? Yeah.
Well, I'm going to answer it this way, and then you can tell me if you need more clarity. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you're responding to these questions, or when you're selecting the materials that you're going to upload, these are what you want to take under consideration. And so it behooves you to look at the range of projects and ventures that you have completed, where you're actually showing a range of, either collaborations or audience mix or venues, different parts of the city, different ages. So it behooves you to include those examples, so that the reviewers get a sense of the range of work that you have done. Now you can tell me if that answers your question.
I think that's a great answer. Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. All right. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. So now we're going to do a demo of the submittable application. So often for some of our other programs, the city and the Office of Arts and Culture uses a platform called Flux. For some other smaller programs, we are able to use Submittable. I think our public art team also uses Submittables for other programs as well. So yeah, with Submittable, basically I'll just emphasize that the deadline for this program is 5 p.m. Tuesday, August 20th. So make sure you have that on your calendar. For any tech support that you need with Submittable, reach out to them directly. They're the experts here, not us. We can't help too much with your Submittable application. So this is the email right here, support@submittable.com, and they have great customer service. And yeah, let us know if you have any other questions outside of that. But they're there to support you there. So again, we kind of already went through the application components. We'll kind of break them down a little bit more here so you can see how it actually looks in the application. You can save your application while working on it. We highly encourage you to do that. You can save draft while you're working on it. And we'll get into some other best practices on that. So getting into the application itself, again, we have the eligibility questions here. And the way that's kind of has conditional logic. You can select yes or no to these questions. If you trigger something that is an ineligible answer, you will get in very large text showing you why that is eligible or ineligible. So to move forward, you just select all the eligible options. And then we get into the narrative questions here. Again, we went over this. This is exactly what was shared on the slides. However, you can just see for these types of options, you'll select which one you're going to do. You can only select one. If you're doing an audio video, put in the link to audio response here. If you're doing written, you can just type right in the text box. And yeah, these are the narrative questions. Again, for the support materials. Let's see here. We went over all these details. I think the biggest thing to highlight here again is if you, sorry, I lost my track. So you'll choose files here as needed. We're only accepting PDF for the resumes and PDFs for the letter of recommendation. The work sample files you can put uploaded here. We would suggest, I mean, there's only two work samples, but if you have a preference for the panel seeing one first before the other one, you can indicate that in how you upload it. And if you want us to check how it's being uploaded, you can reach out to us if that's specific sequencing. We can show you what it's like on our end if you have specifications around that. And here's where you put the description for your work sample, description for work sample 2. Again, for this final support material, you'll be selecting one of these, and you'll do that here, similar to above. Particularly with this audio video sample, we are requesting a start and end time if it is longer than 2 minutes. So you're welcome to submit something that is a 10-minute file, but please just indicate that you'd want the panelists to watch from 3 minutes to 5 minutes. It has to be consecutive. You can't like break it up. Like watch minute 1 to 2 and then watch minute 7 to 8. That just gets too confusing. So yeah. And then part of the application that the panelists will not see, but that we track across all of our programs, we have demographic questions that we use internally to just track to see who's applying to our programs and how we're doing on that front. Again, this is not something the panel sees or evaluates, but it's just, and it is all optional to add in here. And that is the application.
Who's the district?
Oh, the city district.
Okay. And we look,
Yeah, we have a tool in here where you can look at, if you need to. Yes.
okay.
So, yeah, again, mostly for just internal anonymous reporting, just to see who's applying and in which districts people are being from. Irene, would you add anything to that?
I was checking to see what else was going to be on the to-do list and see if there's anything I would add. I think it's maybe just about the description of the work sample, and just making sure that what you're doing is you're introducing the 2 minutes of video or the, whatever number of pages, whatever or the number of images that you're submitting, whatever it is that you're submitting, that you're introducing that very simple and basic to the reviewer as to what they are looking at, what they will be reading, what they will be hearing. Is really helpful just to say, this is from this year. It was a full evening reading, or 20-minute reading, whatever it was, and it was focused on this theme, or I read with 3 others, just kind of giving a sense of the context for what they're going to be experiencing, at whether it's image, video, or text.
Yes, thank you, Irene. That's good context and that's actually.
That would have been my question. How many words, what, just the title, or, so that was helpful. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, we have a 50 word, so it is pretty short. It could be the title of the work, again, all those other examples that I shared also.
Yeah, so just be selective. Yeah, be selective.
So work sample 1 could be a poem that's 3 pages long, and work sample 2 could be a 2-minute video or recording of a reading.
Well,
It's one or the other.
well, you have these 2 work samples. Well, okay, so these 2 work samples are specifically for poems, and then you do have the last material is being able to submit a video, which we don't have a work sample description required for this aspect of it. So I guess I meant a little bit of what Irene shared is you should, for the work sample 1 and 2, they should be poems, 5 pages of your poetry, because they're only in PDF. So there won't be videos. So I think it's mostly just more around the context of, like, this comes from a chapbook, or this comes from a poetry book, this comes from a self-published book, or whatever it might be, to kind of just set it up for the panelists to understand a little more about the context.
And then work sample 2 is the same, so that would be.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's.
So you have 2 opportunities to share 2 different work samples.
And just remember to be concise. It's not an opportunity to give further narrative, like the questions, but this is really introducing the work samples, and that's pretty. If you keep it to that narrows the scope of the content.
Yes. Great questions. Yeah.
Is there any, I mean, maybe it's unpredictable because there will be panelists, but do you think there's any preference for the one below this where there's the option assuming we have all three of those as a possibility, do you think, given that this is a very public role and there will be a lot of events, do you think there might be preference for the panelists to see a video of a performance versus just, you know, a picture of the cover of the book?
I'm not sure. I
Is it
don't
really
think we
this
would
is just
instruct
for-
them to have a preference
Right.
of one being better or more competitive or compelling over the other. It's mostly just how that piece works with the rest of the other things that you're submitting. You know, is it telling a cohesive story about, you know, your history and experience and, you know, a little bit of the vision that you have for this, for yourself in the role? And how are you articulating that through each field, every component? How is it building towards that narrative of you as an applicant? Is that answer your
Yeah,
question?
great.
Any questions online?
Actually, and Tino, excuse me, is going to withdraw from applying since I believe he is not based in Seattle. But he says, and I quote, "I appreciate this program either way and hope to take advantage of future opportunities to help my favorite city grow as a hub for poets and creatives."
Thank you. Yeah, maybe one day I'll have a more of a traveling. That sounds fun. Thank you, Irene.
Sure.
I'm gonna move into back to the slides. And I think it's, yeah, back to Irene.
Yeah, did we do the application to dues? Is that where we are? Yes. Okay, great. Okay, I'm gonna read this off of mine. So again, it's really important to read the guidelines, check your eligibility, and follow up with staff on anything that's unclear, any element that seems unclear while you're reading the guidelines. While exploring the online application early is really important. So you can, again, we went through the application ever so briefly here today, but take your time and go through it. And so you kind of get a lay of the land, so to speak, and you can plan ahead what questions are coming right up to you right away and which ones you're going to have to think a little bit more about. Consider also drafting the application responses in a document, Word document on your laptop, and then cut and paste onto the online application form is probably the best way to do it, so that you don't lose the material that you have created if you forget to save or you step away for a little bit. Then if it's in your laptop, you can go back to it and save it and pick up where you left off. Next is what you are doing now, which is attending the information session, and also to just get, again, just general information, get clarity on the questions and the required materials, but also to know that there are also what we call draft reviews. So you can create text for a couple of the questions, and if you have, or all the questions, and then you can submit those and we can give you some feedback on those. So taking advantage of all of these opportunities really gives you some feedback before you submit the application. To be clear and concise in your application as panelists are reading and evaluating many documents. When you multiply all these documents by the number of applicants, it really is a volume of applications. So you want to be as concise and concrete as possible. You want to update and complete your profile in your in Submittable. If you have an existing profile in Submittable, you want to update it if there's been a change of address or a phone number. All of those are really, contact information is really important. So you want to go back and update that on Submittable. And then preparing your work samples early, because those are really important pieces that you include in your application. And so you want to think about them. If you're unsure, ask a peer and see if you might get a second opinion, someone that you trust, whose opinion you trust might be one idea. I lost my place, I'm sorry. Check all the uploaded items for functionality, clarity, and accessibility. So give yourself time before you submit your application so that you can actually go back and check and make sure that if you click on your resume, it pops up and it's clear and it's legible, all the way to the video, making sure that it is 2 minutes and that it's audible. All of those, just double check all of those things to make sure they're accessible for the reviewer. And then again, submitting your application at least 45 minutes prior to 5 p.m. should you find something that isn't accessible for some reason, or if you realize that you forgot one question or you forgot an element that you decided is important. So it just allows you that last minute editing if needed. And you're not rushing at the last minute. So I'm gonna see if I've added anything outside of that. I think that's it. Those are the tips that we have for you.
Thank you, Irene. And a couple things I would just add, just in terms of we'll get into this in the next slide, but draft review. The request date to do that is August 6th. So request draft application feedback by this August 6th, so that we have time to share that with you before the deadline. Around clear and concise in your application, and also just like best approach is to not assume that anybody knows your work or you yourself. So make sure that you're putting out everything in your application and don't assume or rely on people knowing who you are or your work. And then, yeah, just also around work samples. We don't get feedback on work samples like content-wise. Honestly, just if you've like submitted a draft application or are working on a draft, we can go in and just see it that technically if the work samples are going through successfully. But we won't give you actual feedback on like your poetry itself. And yeah, I think that's it. Any reflections on that, Irene?
Actually, we have a new person who joined us just about 5 minutes ago. Kim, welcome.
Hi, Kim. Welcome, Kim. This is being recorded, so you will get to view the first half of the session. Okay. And this is you, Irene.
Okay, so the timeline and what comes next. So obviously the application opened July 9th. This information session today is almost completed. And then, as Zach mentioned, August 6th will be the last day to request a draft application review. So you can submit your draft and let us know that you're wanting some feedback. At that point, the August 20th is the application deadline at 5 o'clock Pacific time. So again, you want to prepare for that. And as the last tip stated, maybe 45 minutes before, get ready to submit because you've already checked all of your uploaded materials, the narrative. And thereafter, the panel review, the selection process happens October, November of this year. And then again, depending on what month, then the notifications will go out to all applicants October, November 2024. And Zach, I don't know if those letters are sent through Submittable or separately via email. Or do you know?
I don't know that. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
You'll get notified either way.
Yes, all applicants will be sent a notification. And then once the selection has been made, then the contracting will take place. Either the generating the contract and discussion of the contract happens either December 2024 or January 2025. After which the activities, the opportunities, the events begin to be activated, or at least the planning and so forth begin thereafter, after the contract. Are there any questions about the time frame?
Irene, is that to say that the contracting discussion you said happens in December, January, so the selected applicant it'll be a discussion about when those activities will start based on whatever else might be going on?
Well, the contract really states the deliverables for the commission, and then the Civic Poet submits an annual work plan that will be reviewed and submitted based on the Civic Poet's interest and focus area, subject matter, whatever their focus area is, and maybe projects that are maybe in the works, maybe completely new. And as I said, they could be small, medium, or large scale. So yeah, so the contract itself really spells out the deliverables and the scope of work for the commission. And then the work plan is really coming directly from the Civic Poet. It's their work plan that they are submitting, and how they envision the year rolling out with the activities and events that they have envisioned for the year.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, that's the last of our slides. And this is Irene and I's contact information. The phone numbers here are our work cell phones and work email addresses. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions afterwards, follow-up questions, clarifying questions. any support requests with submitting insubmittable if it's not specifically for the submittable team. Yeah, we are here to help you all apply. And then, yeah, this is just kind of the ending Q&A session. Kim, I know you were with us the majority of the session. If you have any questions, we can get to them now, or we can follow up with you afterwards, if that makes sense. Oh, yes.
I had a question about the letter of recommendation. Are we supposed to, should we be asking people for that now, have them email it to us, and then we cut and paste onto the app?
You'll upload a PDF file. So yeah, you can take the emailed content, put it in a Word document or something, and then just convert that to a PDF. And then upload that into the submittable.
And then we include their contact information or just the letter?
Yeah, you can put their contact info if you want. I don't know if they have to specifically, but to put their like email and phone number or something like that.
Yeah, so they can, so y'all can verify that this is a real letter.
A real letter, yeah.
From the party.
Yeah. Yes, you can put their contact info.
So we'll know who responded to and wrote the letter before we submit the application.
The letter of recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be by somebody you know.
Yeah.
Who knows your work and your planning experience and work with racial equity and stuff like that. So yeah, someone who can speak to that, and then you'll upload that. Do you have another question?
Yeah, I do have a question. So I understand that the Civic Poet will create a work plan and have a vision. So since there's been 4, what's the sort of, I don't know, weekly commitment or monthly commitment that we would expect, or that the city would expect of the chosen person?
Yeah, Irene, can you take this question?
Sure. Yeah, the expectation really is that the Civic Poet connect with the project manager as needed. It's nice to check in from time to time, when, especially the Civic Poet's plan might shift somehow, either because of a partner or the venue or any number of reasons. So it's great to check in. The office also works with the Civic Poet on promotions, and so that conversation is ongoing between the Civic Poet, the project manager, and the communications staff. And it's it's also I think it mentioned in the PowerPoint that there was an annual sort of end of year debrief or evaluation, and that would be another point of contact. But really it could be quarterly or more than quarterly, depending on as needed, for support, for referrals, for advice, and certainly to generate the promotions for as events are coming down the pike.
How many events have Civic Poets done usually per year?
It has varied from poet to poet. Yeah, it has varied. So, oftentimes the Civic Poet will identify a focal point of theirs, an interest of theirs, be it subject matter or issue, and will kind of maybe the through line for some of the events, not all of the events, because I also want to say that the community at large also invites the Civic Poet to participate in an existing event? Can you be the opener for this weekend convening that we're having? Or, those kinds of invitations come up. And so again, a lot of that, it's a two-way street. It's some events are Civic Poet designed and originated, and some are by invitation from different organizations, different groups who invite the Civic Poet to read a poem at their event, at their function. So it can be either way.
And sorry to have so many questions, but in the beginning, the question about, summary of your new work projects and events, is that a place to propose a project that we would do if we were in this position? I think, it's like, I think we all have projects that we work on, that we're working on already, and regardless, but there's other things I can imagine doing if I were the Civic Poet that I probably wouldn't have the means or the time to do otherwise. So is that a place, I'm thinking of Claudia's poetry map, and I wondered if that was some, I don't know how the application process was then for the first person to get the job, but I'm just kind of wondering, is this a project-based application, or is it kind of, oh, these are things you've done and you could be good in this role?
I would say, Irene, feel free to chime in. I would say it's not necessarily a project based. It doesn't have to have a fully realized project. Specifically, I think it's mostly using both your work and experience as a poet and event organizer, community organizer to show how your work can be immersive across the city through events and poetry, and how you've demonstrate how you demonstrate that, how the work that you do exemplifies that. But yeah, this isn't here's my. You can have elements of the vision of what you're currently doing and how that can excite the panel into what you would do as a Civic Poet. But I don't think that's has to be how you interpret that question particularly. Yeah.
Yeah, there may also be a situation where you have a project that's sort of in midstream, and you want to continue it, but you want to maybe develop it or create partnerships, but it's something that's kind of in planning stages. So, and that may demonstrate, as Zach said, your ability to reach new and different audiences, or follow a new, theme or focus. So I think any of those areas that lend insight for the reviewers about what you either have done, or you're in the process of, or you're sort of extending something.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I do want to give Kim a chance to ask any questions if you have any questions online, Kim.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see my raised hand, but I had a few questions. Well, I learned about this today, so I feel like I don't know much about it, and then I missed most of the presentation, so I'm even more confused. But I guess to give some background is I am interested in being a poet, but I don't really have any published works. So I don't know if that already makes me not eligible, or if that's something I should be more aware of and consider.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I would say this particular program is looking for more poets who have either published work as a poet or have advanced kind of experience as a poet in poetry communities and established, we say established body of work in the kind of eligibility criteria. And so I think, we do have some other programs that are for some like more emerging artists in across disciplines, poetry included. For this one specifically, there's a little bit more of a high caliber program for. It's not only for established poets, but people who have been in the poetry field for a little while and who have bodies of work that they can share as their work samples and speak to their work as a poet in the community. But we're glad. You're still welcome to apply. If you want to have us answer questions that you have, but just knowing that it is a very competitive application process based on the review criteria and the components and everything like that. But yeah, does that kind of answer some of your question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask for, I guess, like resources or programs for more newer emergent artists, since I probably won't apply to this one from what it sounds like, if that might help.
Yeah, I think did you register for this event? If so, we'll have your email. We can follow up and send you some links for some of that stuff.
Yeah, that'd be great if I could receive a follow-up for other resources, because again, I learned about this today, and so I was like, oh, this sounds really cool. And then I learned like, oh, this is someone who like higher caliber or has more published works or experience. And I was like, oh, that's not me, I don't think. Maybe I'll still come to the info session and learn more. So I was kind of like waiting in the other room for a long time until I saw your recent.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you. That's my job, and I apologize that I didn't see your name. Sorry about that.
Oh yeah, no worries. I think I was in there for like 30 minutes and was like, oh, is it gonna start?
I'm so sorry. That's my role. So I apologize for that. But I did want to tell you that we do have other funding opportunities in the office for less seasoned poets, where you can build out your work. There's Smart Ventures and City Artists, which is also has its alternating disciplines in every other year. And one of the cycles is focused on literary artists of all genres. So we have those and other programs as well. So you may want to check out our website and see what other opportunities are available for you to create new work.
Great. You said they were called Smart something?
Smart Ventures. That's a revolving sort of deadline. It's ongoing every month, and it's a smaller amount of award, but it's a quick turnaround. And so if you have something coming up, and it can cover expenses for a small amount of money, but nonetheless funds. And as I mentioned, City Artists is a larger award. It's an annual, however, deadline, and it's every other year for literary artists. So you can you can check that out. But there are also other programs that you can also explore.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'm happy to talk with you about some of those programs as well. The city artist and our colleague Christy Wu manages the Smart Ventures, and you can call any of the staff and ask them questions about the program just to get more clarity beyond what you read on the webpage.
Oh, that'd be great.
Again, are there any other questions over here? Or anyone else in the, I can't see the chat, but. Or
There
Teams,
are no more questions in the chat.
Okay. Great. Well, I think
So is that it?
that's a wrap. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all. And again, is our contact information if you have more questions. We are here to help you.
Great.
Yes. And just remember the draft reviews if you want to have your narrative reviewed and give you some feedback.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Irene.
Yes,